The young and the restless spoilers in the oppressive silence of a dimly lit room. The true orchestrator of this deadly game revealed himself, a twisted mastermind whose perverse delight lay in toying with his captives. He was a man who thrived on control and humiliation, using a central loudspeaker as both his instrument and his voice. Through that cold, unfeeling device, he mocked his unwilling participants, Sharon and Phyllis, issuing commands that chilled the very marrow of their bones. Every word he uttered dripped with menace, a reminder that defiance was not an option if they wished to survive. Phyllis, already on the verge of breaking, felt the pressure mounting until it became unbearable. With her mind teetering on the brink of panic, she snatched a chair from the corner of the room, a desperate, futile act of rebellion against her unseen tormentor. Her hands trembled as she raised the chair, ready to smash the glass of a nearby window in an attempt to break free from the confinement of her nightmare. But just as the chair neared its mark, the booming voice over the loudspeaker rang out again, a harsh warning that sent a jolt of terror through her. "Do that and you will die." Sharon, ever the voice of reason amid chaos, reached out with urgent, calming words. "Phyllis, please, stay calm," she pleaded, her tone measured and resolute. Having been kidnapped twice before, Sharon had learned to navigate the treacherous waters of fear with a cautious confidence. Experience had honed her ability to keep her emotions in check, a skill that now allowed her to serve as the anchor in this tempest of terror. "If you lose control, we're finished," she added, her eyes never leaving Phyllis's desperate form. Phyllis's inner turmoil was palpable. The pounding in her head, amplified by the piercing music that the loudspeaker suddenly unleashed, only intensified her sense of dread. Every beat of the ominous melody reverberated through her skull, a cruel reminder that pain was an inevitable part of this twisted ordeal. Yet, deep within her, a spark of determination began to glow. She knew that surrendering to panic would only further tighten the kidnapper's grip on them both. Despite the searing pain and the overwhelming urge to lash out, she realized that if she was to escape, she had to master her fear and cooperate with Sharon. In that critical moment, the balance of power between terror and resilience shifted subtly. Sharon's calm influence served as a lifeline, a reminder that there was still a path forward even in the heart of despair. "I know it hurts," Sharon whispered, gently placing a hand on Phyllis's shoulder, "but we must keep our wits about us. We can outsmart him if we work together." Phyllis, though trembling and angry, managed a nod. It was a silent agreement, a promise that despite the chaos, they would not allow this demented puppeteer to dictate the final act of their lives. Meanwhile, outside the confines of their immediate prison, two other figures, Nick and Daniel, found themselves locked in a heated debate. Their voices, laden with both urgency and frustration, echoed through the corridors of a makeshift investigation hub. "I don't understand why they'd call home if they're being held captive," Nick argued, his eyes scanning a jumble of evidence and security footage on his computer. "It doesn't make sense. If they're truly in danger, why risk exposure?" Daniel, equally passionate but more methodical in his approach, countered, "Maybe they're trying to send a message, or perhaps it's a diversion tactic by the kidnapper. We need to consider every possibility before jumping to conclusions." The two men wrestled with the paradox of their situation. On one hand, the notion that Sharon and Phyllis might be feigning some semblance of normalcy was absurd, but on the other, the persistent calls to their home suggested an intelligence behind the act, an intelligence that might be intended to confuse or distract. Their discussion highlighted a broader conundrum. While the captor's messages through the loudspeaker were undeniably real and terrifying, the behavioral patterns of his victims hinted at a level of composure that defied the circumstances. Nick, always the skeptic, believed that the phone calls could be a ploy, a calculated risk designed to keep the captor's true identity shrouded in mystery. "We need hard evidence, not just theories," he insisted. "Until we have more, every assumption is just that, a guess." Daniel nodded in agreement, his mind churning through the possibilities. Chance has been diverting blame like a maniac, pointing fingers at Billy and Sally. But that might be just his way of covering his tracks. It's like he's playing a double game. Yet, despite everything, he's still a cop. It's hard to believe a lawman could be behind all this, unless something happened to him a long time ago that we never saw coming. In the midst of their internal debates, both Nick and Daniel recognized that the key to unraveling the mystery lay in the minutiae, the faint echoes over the loudspeaker, the precise timing of the music, and the subtle behavioral cues of their captives. The revelation that the mastermind might be manipulating both the victims and the investigation added another layer of complexity to an already convoluted case. Every action, every seemingly minor detail, became a piece of the puzzle that might one day expose the true face of this deranged orchestrator. Back in the holding room, the interplay between terror and tenacity continued to unfold. As the music blared and the warning echoed once more through the speakers, Phyllis gritted her teeth against the pain in her head. She clenched her eyes shut for a moment, summoning the inner strength that had seen Sharon through past horrors. This was not the time to give in to despair. With a final, defiant breath, she resolved to push through the agony and work with Sharon to find a way out, knowing that the only way to survive was to confront her fear head-on and reclaim control from the twisted mastermind. In that dark hour, every decision mattered. The perverse game was designed not just to terrorize but to break them, to force them into submission through psychological torment and physical pain. Yet, amid the cacophony of warnings, shattering music, and the palpable tension between captor and captive, a glimmer of hope emerged. It lay in the solidarity between Sharon and Phyllis, a bond forged in shared adversity and hardened by experience. Their collective determination to outwit their deranged abductor was a testament to the resilience of the human spirit, even when faced with the most incomprehensible cruelty. And so, as Nick and Daniel continued their desperate search for conclusive evidence, and as Chance's investigations further muddled the truth, the fate of Sharon and Phyllis hung in the balance, a precarious dance between submission and rebellion. The master puppeteer, with his mocking announcements and lethal traps, might have orchestrated this deadly spectacle, but the captives, united by fear and hope, were slowly rewriting their own destiny. Every minute, every heartbeat, carried the weight of a choice: to succumb to the terror or to rise and fight for the possibility of freedom. In the oppressive grip of uncertainty, the stakes had never been higher. Moments ago, Phyllis had almost made a catastrophic mistake, a reckless, impulsive act that could have cost her life. In a desperate bid to shatter the chains of her panic, she had attempted something so dangerous it threatened to unleash irrevocable harm. But in that critical instant, Sharon's unwavering presence of mind intervened, halting Phyllis before she could carry out her fatal error. It was a jarring reminder that in this deadly game, every decision could be a step toward salvation, or an unwitting plunge into oblivion. A game of life and death, the situation was nothing short of a macabre game of survival. The anonymous puppeteer behind their torment had proven time and again that he was a master of manipulation, a man, or perhaps something far more sinister, who controlled every aspect of their captivity with chilling precision. His cryptic warnings had become a constant, echoing through the space where Sharon and Phyllis were held captive. With each passing moment, the realization sank in: this was no random act of violence. This was a meticulously orchestrated death game, where the rules were set by a faceless tormentor whose next move could be fatal. Phyllis, still reeling from the near-tragic consequences of her impulsiveness, now understood with a painful clarity that nothing in this nightmare was ever truly under her control. The kidnapper's strategy was clear: to instill terror, to break their spirit, and to remind them that at any moment, he could decide to end their lives. Yet, amid the suffocating fear, there was also a burgeoning sense of determination, a fierce, desperate resolve to prolong their survival, to buy time for rescue, and ultimately, to reclaim the reins of their destiny. A vow forged in adversity. In the quiet aftermath of the near-disastrous incident, as adrenaline began to ebb and the harsh reality of their situation set in, Phyllis found herself overcome with gratitude toward Sharon. The calm, measured way in which Sharon had diffused the chaos spoke volumes of her strength and the hard-earned wisdom gleaned from past ordeals. Sharon had been kidnapped twice before, and those experiences had taught her the invaluable lesson of maintaining composure in the face of terror. Now, in the midst of this dire scenario, her steadfastness was the beacon that helped guide them both away from the brink of disaster. With exhaustion etched on their faces and the terror of their predicament still looming large, Phyllis and Sharon shared a moment of heartfelt repentance. They apologized for the mistakes that had nearly cost them everything and made a solemn promise to each other, no matter how grim the circumstances, they would fight together. Their vow was not simply about surviving the moment, it was about finding the strength to endure the long, dark hours ahead, clinging to the hope that rescue would come in time. A brief respite in the midst of chaos later that night, the relentless pressure of their situation began to catch up with them. Weary beyond measure, the two women found themselves collapsing onto an old, worn sofa in the corner of the room, a temporary sanctuary amid the cold, hostile environment. As they lay side by side, the fatigue of their ordeal mingled with the bittersweet relief of having dodged a mortal threat. In that fleeting lull, the bond between them deepened further, a testament to the extraordinary resilience of the human spirit even when faced with inhuman cruelty. Yet, even as they sought solace in each other's company, the ever-present threat of their captor loomed like a dark cloud. Unbeknownst to them, the kidnapper was watching. A subtle, almost imperceptible smile played upon his lips as he observed the two vulnerable figures resting on the sofa. His expression was enigmatic, a silent, mocking promise that he was still very much in control. The smile was not one of triumph in the conventional sense, but rather a chilling harbinger of the twisted mind behind these orchestrated horrors. Who was he? What drove him to design such a merciless game? These questions would haunt them long after the immediate terror had passed. The unanswered questions back in the broader network of investigations outside the captivity, suspicions and debates swirled. Investigators like Nick and Daniel were grappling with the bizarre details of the case. Why were Sharon and Phyllis able to make contact, even as they remained prisoners? Why would the captor allow them any semblance of communication if his objective was to break their will completely? Such questions only served to deepen the mystery and intensify the urgency to piece together the puzzle before it was too late. For now, though, the focus had to remain on the immediate imperative, survival. Phyllis's near-fatal mistake, narrowly averted by Sharon's quick thinking, underscored the delicate balance they maintained every moment. Every action, every word from the ominous loudspeaker, every piece of cryptic instruction from their captor was a reminder that the game was far from over, and the next move could very well decide their fate. A moment of reflection amidst the storm as dawn began to edge its way through the darkness, casting long, uncertain shadows over the room, the two women lay on the sofa, exhausted yet determined. They knew that in the coming hours, every second could be a battle against despair and the relentless ticking of a clock that counted down to their possible demise. Their shared ordeal had stripped away any illusions of safety or predictability. Now, they had only each other and the slim hope that their captor might one day slip up, that some unforeseen weakness in his grand design would present an opportunity for escape. Phyllis, her heart still pounding with the residual terror of what might have been, whispered words of thanks to Sharon. In that fragile moment, their whispered promises mingled with the silent prayers for a rescue that seemed both imminent and impossibly far away. They vowed to remain united, to fight not only for their own survival but for the chance to dismantle the cruel game that held them captive. The shadow of the unknown, and yet, amidst all this, the specter of their unknown tormentor, this mysterious orchestrator of their nightmares, remained a constant, unsettling presence. His identity was shrouded in enigma, his motives as inscrutable as the dark smile he wore. Was he a deranged criminal mastermind, a vengeful spirit fueled by personal vendettas, or something even more sinister than any of them could imagine? His control over their fate was absolute, and his penchant for cruelty ensured that every moment was fraught with peril. The questions about his identity and his ultimate goals would linger long after the immediate crisis was over. For now, though, the reality was inescapable. The captor was still out there, and he could strike at any moment. His smile, seen in the dim light as he observed his captives sleeping, was both a threat and a taunt, a reminder that the game was not yet finished, and that every heartbeat might bring them closer to a final, irrevocable end. The road ahead in the silence that followed the chaotic events of the night, as the first rays of daylight began to filter in, Phyllis and Sharon clung to the hope that they could outlast the torment. Their temporary respite on the sofa was but a brief pause in a larger struggle, a struggle to survive, to resist the psychological torment, and ultimately, to seize back control of their lives. The mission was clear: to prolong every precious second, to keep hope alive until help could arrive, and to someday uncover the true identity of the twisted soul orchestrating this deadly game. With a renewed determination born from their shared ordeal, they resolved that they would not let fear dictate their destiny. Instead, they would channel every bit of their strength into finding a way to turn the tables on their captor. As they lay there, vulnerable yet resolute, the chilling smile of the kidnapper remained etched in their minds. A stark reminder of the darkness that lurked just beyond the edges of their fragile sanctuary. Who was he, truly? And what unspeakable motives drove him to play with lives as if they were mere pawns in a grotesque game? These questions haunted the space around them, fueling both their terror and their determination. For now, all they could do was rest, gather their strength, and prepare for the long, arduous battle that lay ahead. In the silent promise shared between them, there was a glimmer of hope, a hope that one day, the shadows would recede, and the true face of their tormentor would be revealed. Until then, they would fight with every ounce of their being, united in purpose and bound by the unbreakable bond of survival. In the ever-looming presence of an unseen enemy, the fragile alliance between Sharon and Phyllis was their only beacon in the darkness, a reminder that even in the heart of terror, the human spirit can find the strength to resist, to hope, and ultimately, to fight for freedom.